Messiah. Judah is glad to see his day. From east and west the people travel. He will show the way. He will show the way. God has spoken to his people. Hallelujah. And his words are words of wisdom. Hallelujah. God has spoken to his people. Hallelujah. And his words are words of wisdom. Hallelujah. God has spoken to his people. Hallelujah. And his words are words of wisdom. Hallelujah. God has spoken to his people. Hallelujah. And his words are words of wisdom. Hallelujah. Nice. All right. This is the song with the mysterious second verse. Not included in the Shireen book, but we put it in the slideshow, so. We drink, yeah, go ahead, Dave, put it back up there. We drink, with joy, we drink the living water from the well that never will run dry. That's it, that's all we have. Everything else is the same. You don't have to remember, you just have to read it. I have to remember. Behold, God is my salvation. I will trust and will not be afraid. For the Lord my God is my strength and my song. He also has become my salvation. For the Lord my God is my strength and my song. He also has become my salvation. La, 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 la. The living water from the well that never will run dry. For the Lord my God is my strength and my song. He also has become my salvation. For the Lord my God is my strength and my song. He also has become my salvation. La 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 la. Get on that magic station wagon down the bumpy road and sing the song that we sing at camp. I will call upon the Lord, who is worthy to be praised. So shall I be saved. God of my salvation be exalted. The Lord liveth, and blessed be my rock, and let the God of my salvation be exalted. I will call upon the Lord, who is worthy to be praised. So shall I be saved from my enemies. The Lord liveth, and blessed be my rock, and let the God of my salvation be exalted. The Lord liveth, and blessed be my rock, and let the God of my salvation be exalted. How's everybody doing?
Good.
Awesome. There's something about singing, there's something about music. It's an art form like all the other art forms, but it's, I don't know what it is. It's just so much more visceral. It goes down deep, you know. It just, I mean, you can look at a painting and get very moved. Art, and even reading and poetry. But music, especially when you get to sing with it, it's different. It's very different. mountains are around Jerusalem, the Lord is all around his people. As the mountains are around Jerusalem, the Lord is all around his people. From this time forth and forevermore, the Lord is all around his people. From this time forth and forevermore, the Lord is all around his people. Like Mount Zion in the midst of Jerusalem, we shall not be moved, we shall not be moved. Like Mount Zion in the midst of Jerusalem, we shall not be moved, we shall not be moved. From this time forth and forevermore, the Lord is all around his people. From this time forth, yes, it shall always be, the Lord is all around his people. All right, one more. He that keepeth Israel neither slumbers nor sleeps, slumbers nor sleeps, neither slumbers nor sleeps. He that keepeth Israel neither slumbers nor sleeps, slumbers nor sleeps. Neither slumbers nor sleeps, slumbers nor sleeps, neither slumbers nor sleeps. He that keepeth Israel, neither slumbers nor sleeps, slumbers nor sleeps. Shabbat Shalom, everyone. 33, I believe. 33 days.
Who's counting?
Good.
Until the millennium, Good evening, Shabbat Shalom. You know, the Titanic over here is way too heavy on this side. So try to appear lighter. And I noticed there's some nice stuff on our windows.
Yes.
Good.
Yes,
Beautiful.
we're very grateful.
Window treatments.
They've been treated, haven't they? And they feel better now. Yes, they do. All right, good evening, Shabbat Shalom. We have many sheets of paper, of course, that's what we do best here. What should we do first? First of all, next week, there will be no service in this building, right? Friday night is the first night of Pesach, Passover, and it is traditionally a family celebration or an extended family celebration. That's done at home, and so we didn't want to make you feel that divided loyalty. So for sure, you should be with your family celebrating Passover. At least, if not next Friday night, then sometime probably next weekend. Having said that, you need to be prepared to have a Passover to celebrate at your home or at the relative's home. And for that, you will need to come tomorrow at 1 p.m. I would say it's going to take an hour and a half or so, depending on how many questions are asked, but Rabbi John will go through the actual Haggadah with you, and he will give you tons of extra things that don't appear on the page, but are nevertheless part of the Jewish celebration of the Passover. And if you have never been through Passover with John or the congregation, this will be extremely enlightening for you. And proving to you that you don't need an extra special Haggadah or special book for Passover. You just need to read the plain old Maxwell House version you can get for free at many, many fine grocery stores in the area. So, if you're interested in that, and I think you should be if you want to lead a Passover, that would be tomorrow at 1. And I believe he will make Haggadahs, or Haggadot, if we're being very, very, very careful, especially for free for you. They might be slightly used, but you know how things are slightly used. They're very heartwarming because you remember the generations of people that read that book, and it's nice. Anyway, it's free, so you don't have to bring your own, and you might be able to write in the ones we give you. Okay, let's see what else. I guess we still have the financial need that we talked about last time, and I see the guy in the middle here, he seems to know a lot about the day-to-day activities in our books, and so we could please use your help right now. I know you agree in theory, but sometimes it's hard to make things happen, but this would be a time when you would try extra hard to give us some cash. That could be anything they could fit in the blue box there. A week from Sunday, we have Chakia. I know it's easy for me to say. That would be Festival of the Resurrection. Now, it's on Sunday morning, but not early. It's at 11 o'clock because that's when people could possibly get there on time. Because if you make it at like 7 o'clock, anybody in leadership probably wouldn't be able to make it on time, and we would not have a joyful experience at the holidays. So let's make it so we have a joyful experience and everybody comes. It's at Philippi Park. Literally, if you go up Bayshore, you can make it that way up through the small town of Safety Harbor. It's not a giant extravaganza. You go through the city of Safety Harbor to Philippi Park. Casual. This is not, don't wear your Easter bonnet. Well, you could, but it would be horribly overdressed. Everyone else would be at a picnic. So you do what you need. Definitely no high heels because you're going to walk up a hill. And that's that. Directly around Pesach is always Holocaust Remembrance Day. This year, Holocaust Remembrance Day, we will commemorate our services on Friday, May 3rd. And then a week after that, we have Yom HaAtzmaut, which is Israeli Independence Day. So we like to think that the fall are busy with holidays. We've got a lot of holidays in the spring too. All right. Our next Hebrew class, for those of you who are in my class, or whether you're not, will be this Sunday at 1 p.m. We are having a good time. I may spring on the students an actual blessing to go through. I don't know. We'll see how you're doing. We will see if we can go through it, plow through an actual blessing. And Havdalah game night to the 27th. This is for later in the sermon. I'm exhausted. No, I have notes here. Florida Holocaust Museum presents, and this is on the table in the foyer, and you want to take note of it. There are several things you might want, including Ed Asner, who I think is a wonderful actor, and it's going to be in a play there called The Soap Myth, and I'll let you figure out what that is, because it's not maybe what you think it is, and I find it very interesting. And then there's other various things, and this is a really good way for us as Messianic Jews to become involved in the wider Jewish community. And it's, once again, you'll always meet very interesting people when we meet with the wider community. And Virginia, hi Virginia, see that lovely lady over there? She has collected extra Passover books. Do you have them like yourself? Okay, so if you want to have free Passover books, you're not selling them. Okay, she's taking $10 off the price and making them free. Then you talk to Virginia. That'd be great. If you need any for your Seder, she says. Thank you so much, Toda Haba. Very, very nice. Well, as I said, we're very busy. Still need more people on this side of the ship. Otherwise, we look like this, but that's okay. The spring brings new life. It brings new kinds of blooms and new kinds of pollen to the air. We just spent a few days with Seth and Carolina in Atlanta. And if you think we have pollen here, we don't have pollen here compared to Atlanta, which has literally piles of pollen everywhere. But they also have spring flowers that I miss. I miss seeing tulips. I miss seeing daffodils. I miss seeing flowering trees at this time of year, especially the fruit trees. And so each season has its own benefits. Each season has its own ways of pointing us forward into the future and looking forward to what God has next for us. And we're very busy in spring. Trees and flowers are very busy. And so it's a time for us to remember our Maker, to remember the initiator and the impetus behind all of creation, and the one who guides us and protects us every day. Shabbat Shalom.
Okay, as we begin our service this evening, in traditional fashion, we rise to greet Shabbat. Stand up, face the door, as if you're actually welcoming Shabbat through the door. And in one sense, that's to reinforce the idea that this is a special guest that we get to, whose presence we get to enjoy, but also it's part of our anticipation of this time together with the God of the universe. Lechad Odi sets the stage for us, pages 14 to 25. As Jenny leads, and we respond.
Shabbat lechu v'nelchu מקור הברכה, מראש מקדם לסוכה, סוף מעשה במחשבה תחילה. לך דודי, לקראת קלה, בני שבת מקבלה. לך דודי לקראת קלה, בני שבת מקבלה. נערי מעפר קומי, לבשי ביתי תפארתך מי. על יד בן ישי בית הלחמי, קרבה אל נפשי גאלה. לך דודי, לך דודי לקראת קלה, בני שבת מקבלה. לך דודי לקראת קלה, בני שבת מקבלה. התעוררי, כי בעורף כולי אורי, שיר דברי, כבוד אדוני עלייך נקבע. לך דודי, לך דודי לקראת קלה, בני שבת מקבלה. לך דודי לקראת קלה, בני שבת מקבלה. בואי בשלום עטרת פלה, גם בשמחה וצהלה, טוב אמוני עם סגולה, בואי חלה, בואי חלה. לך דודי, לך דודי לקראת קלה, בני שבת מקבלה. לך דודי לקראת קלה, בני שבת מקבלה. Come, my friend, meet the bride. Let's welcome the presence of the Sabbath. Observe and remember in a single statement the unique God caused us to hear his command. He alone is Lord, and his name is unique, to his fame and splendor and praise. Come, my friend, meet the bride. Let's welcome the presence of the Sabbath. Let's go to meet the Sabbath, for she is the source of blessing from the beginning, anointed from ancient days, though made last, conceived first. Come, my friend, meet the bride. Let's welcome the presence of the Sabbath. Shake the dust off yourself, rise. Dress in garments of glory, my people. Jesse's son, the Bethlehemite, draws near, bringing us redemption. Come, my friend, meet the bride. Let's welcome the presence of the Sabbath. Wake up, your light has come. Arise, shine, awake, awake. Sing a grand song. The glory of God is revealed to you. Come, my friend, meet the bride. Let's welcome the presence of the Sabbath. Come in peace, crown of your Lord. Come with joy and with cheer. Come to the faithful among the chosen people. Come, bride, come. Come, my friend, meet the bride. Let's welcome the presence of the Sabbath.
You may be seated. Come to the faithful among the chosen people. Shabbat has surely come to us as we come into God's presence, and this we celebrate. We celebrate as we kindle the lights tonight, because it's the reminder that God has permanently connected himself to us as our God, and we as his people. Every Shabbat reminds us of that.
Eloheinu melech haolam, asher kiddushanu b'mitzvoto, v'tzivanu ad ner shel Shabbat. Blessed are you, our God, King of our universe, who's given us the command to light the candles on Shabbat. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam, asher kiddushanu b'mitzvoto, v'tzivanu el hiyoid or el goyim, v'neten lanu Yeshua Meshikenu ha-or la-olam. Blessed are you, O Lord, King of our universe, who has sanctified us by your commandments and commanded us to be a light for the nations, and gave us Yeshua our Messiah, the light of the world. Shabbat Shalom.
Shabbat Shalom.
As we sang Lechad Odi, we reminded ourselves, dress in garments of glory, my people, because Jesse's son, the Bethlehemite, draws near, bringing us redemption. And the response was said, wake up, your light is come. And that is what we understand, that the light of the world has in fact come. And he's lit up not only our lives, but will light up the world to come as well. We come into his presence, pages 40 and 41, and acknowledge that he sits in the place of ultimate authority in the heavenly realms. Pages 40 and 41, Elohim Asher.
Elohim asher diber, nikatem pamim rabot, uvibrachim rabot el avot beyad haneviim. Diber aleinu be'achari hayamim ha'ele, beyad harein asher samleo reish kol, uvyado gam asa et ha'olamim, uzohar kevodo, v'tzelem atzmuto, v'nosei kol bikvaro, rav hagvura, ulachar she'asa, tihur chatayim, yashav le'erin, ha'adulam. In the past, God spoke to our fathers through the prophets at many times in various ways. But now, in the end of days, he has spoken to us by the Messiah, his Son, whom he appointed the heir of all things, and through whom he made the universe. The Son is the full radiance of God's glory and the flawless manifestation of his reality. He sustains all things by his powerful word. After he made atonement for sins, he sat down in the place of authority beside the majesty in heaven. True and firm, established and lasting, right and faithful, loved and treasured, desired and pleasant, feared and mighty, ordered and acceptable, good and beautiful is this word to us forever and ever.
He made atonement for sins. The text says, and having done that, he has fulfilled the words of the prayers that we have been offering up to our God down through the centuries. And so we take up those words as fulfilled promises now in our Tehillah Tabrik Chadashah portion, pages 136 and 137. He has come and has redeemed his people, as I said, in fulfillment of our prayers and of his promises. That becomes our response now, and the text begins in the following way. Baruch Adonai Elohei Yisrael, ki pakad et amo vayishlach lo padut, vayarem lanu keren Yeshua b'veit David avdo. Together we respond.
Praise be to the Lord, the God of Israel, because he has come and has redeemed his people. He has raised up a horn of salvation for us in the house of his servant David, as he said through his holy prophets of long ago, salvation from our enemies and from the hands of all who hate us, to show mercy to our fathers and to remember his holy covenant, the oath he swore to our father Abraham, to rescue us from the hand of our enemies and to enable us to serve him without fear, in holiness and righteousness before him all our days.
Praise be to the Lord, the God of Israel. We continue to offer him those praises as we turn now to pages 156 and 157 for Sephardi Kaddish. It also reminds us that the one who sits on the throne is the one whose return we anticipate as part of the words of this response of praise to our great God.
יתגדל ויתקדש שמי רבם, בהומה דברך חירותי, וימלך מלכותי ויצמח ברכני ויקרב משיחי, בחייכון ובימיכון ובחיי לכל בית ישראל, ויגלו בזמן קריב אמרו אמן. יהי שמי רבם מבורך, לעולם עולמי עולמיה שמי רבם מבורך, לעולם עולמי עולמיה יתברך, וישתבח ויתפאר ויתרומם ויתנשא, ויתהדר ויתעלה ויתהלל, שמי דקודש בריחו. לעילה מן כל ברכתה, וישרתה תושבחתה ונחמתה, דאמרן בעלמא ואמרו אמן. יהי שלום הרב מן שמיה, וחיים טובים עלינו, ועל כל ישראל ואמרו אמן. עושה שלום במרומיו, ויעשה שלום עלינו, ועל כל ישראל ואמרו אמן. Glorified and sanctified be his great name in the world, which is created according to his will. May he bring about the reign of his kingdom and cause his salvation to sprout, and bring near his Messiah in your lifetime and in your days, and in the life of all the house of Israel speedily, yes, soon, and let us say, Amen. May his great name be blessed forever and forever, eternally. Blessed and praised, glorified and exalted, extolled and honored, adored and lauded be the name of the Holy One, blessed be he, who is high above, far above all blessings and hymns and praises and consolations which are spoken in the world, and say, Amen. May there be great peace from heaven and good life for us and for all Israel, and say, Amen. He who makes peace in the heavenly realms, may he make peace for us and for all Israel, and let us say, Amen.
Blessed be he who is high above, far above all blessings, hymns, praises, consolations which are spoken in the world, is what we said. This is why we then ask appropriately on pages 48, 44, and 45, who is like you, O Lord among the gods? Truly, there is none like you. That becomes our response in response to Jenny. But the text begins, praise our exalted God. Blessed is he who is to be blessed. Moses and the people of Israel sang a song to you with great joy, and with that same great joy we sing that same song, as they all said, now we all say, who is like you, O Lord among the gods?
Who is like you, glorious in holiness, awesome in praises, doing wonders? Mi chamocha ba'elim Adonai, mi chamocha nehedar b'kodesh, Nora tehilot osef elei. Mi kamoka ba'elim Adonai, mi kamoka nehedar b'kodesh, Nora tehilot osef elei.
As we now stand in the presence of this great God, we turn to pages 88 and 89 to answer the question we just raised. Ein kamoka, truly there is none like you, O Lord, among the gods.
Kamocha v'Elohim Adonai, v'ein kamasecha. Malchutcha malchut kol olamim, u'memshelcha b'kol dor, b'kol dor v'dor. Adonai melech, Adonai malach, Adonai imalok le'olam va'ed. Adonai oz le'amo yitain, Adonai yivarech et amo b'shalom. Together, there is none like you among the gods, my Lord, and there is nothing that compares to your deeds. Your kingdom is a kingdom that endures for all eternity, and your sovereignty extends throughout all generations. The Lord reigns, the Lord has reigned, the Lord shall reign throughout eternity. The Lord will bless his people with peace.
Your sovereignty extends throughout all generations. It needs to extend throughout all of our lives, each and every one of our lives, through the whole of our lives. That is what we now pledge as we turn and face Jerusalem, the direction of the ark, and we respond with the Shema, pages 34 to 39.
Shema Yisrael, Adonai Eloheinu, Adonai Echad. Baruch Shem Kevod Malchuto Le'olam va'ed. Ve'ahavta et Adonai Elohecha le'kol levavcha u'kol nafshecha u'kol me'orecha. Ve'hayu hadvarim ha'eleh asher Anochi mitzavcha hayom al levavecha. Ve'shinantam levanecha ve'dibarta bam. Ve'shivtecha b'beitecha u'vlektecha b'derech. U'shachtecha u'ikomecha u'shartam ve'yotar yadecha. Ve'hayu letotefot b'einecha. U'ktavtam al mezuzot beitecha u'visharecha. Hear, O Israel, the Lord is our God, the Lord alone. Blessed be he whose glory is kingdom is eternal. Love the Lord your God with all your heart, and with all your life, and with all your strength. These commandments that I give you today are to be on your hearts. Impress them on your children. Talk about them when you sit at home and when you walk along the road, when you lie down and when you get up. Tie them as reminders on your hands and bind them on your foreheads. Write them on the doorframes of your houses and on your gates.
We said, in essence, that we would love the Lord our God with all our heart, all of our life, all of our strength, and his commandments would be on our hearts. We pick up with that theme for the Amida portions this evening, beginning with the abridged section at the top of pages 60 and 61, and then moving on to the fifth paragraph, pages 74 to 77. In order for us to serve our God as we promised we would, we need to have, as it were, circumcised hearts. And so the first line says, literally, grant us, O Lord, our God, the knowledge of your ways, circumcise our hearts to your worship, to your service, as, in fact, we anticipate the time of the lengthening of the light of the Messiah, the son of Jesse. Those become our words, 160 and 61, and then we continue on pages 74 to 77. And so be pleased, O Lord our God, with your people Israel and with their prayer, and restore the service to your holy house. Blessed are you, O Lord, who returns your presence to Zion. Our anticipation is that he does, in fact, restore his presence and accept our service as part of that, as he restores his service to his holy house. Even so, on pages 88, 89, pick up on that theme where now what we have expressed for ourselves will be expressed throughout the world. When, as the text tells us, from Zion will go forth the Torah, the word of the Lord out of Jerusalem. Justice goes among us even now. Pages 88.
ויהי בנזוהר ויאמר משה קום אדוני ויפוצו זרועך וינוסו משנאיך מפניך כי מציון תצא תורה כי מציון תצא תורה ודבר אדוני ירושלים ברוך שנתן תורה תורה ברוך שנתן תורה תורה לעמו ישראל בקדושתו. And it came to pass, whenever the ark went forward, Moses would say, Arise, O Lord, and let your enemies be scattered. May those who hate you flee from before you. For from Zion shall go forth the Torah, and the word of the Lord out of Jerusalem. Blessed be he who in holiness gave the Torah to his people Israel.
He gave that Torah to his people Israel and those who have joined with him. And so, we do now respond to that gift with the responses found on page 133.
The ark now unveils its treasure.
To our eyes and minds and hearts.
Inside, the scroll of Torah stands.
It stands there with all its richness and wisdom.
As we listen, voices speak, voices of our ancestors.
Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, Joseph, and Moses.
O God, they bring us your instructions for us.
Sarah, Rebecca, Rachel, and Leah, and Miriam speak to us as well.
O God, they move us to respond to your promises to us.
We are grateful for your words, the words of Torah.
Hear, O Israel, the Lord calls.
We will hear your words that we may learn them, love them, live them.
What does the Lord require of you? To fear him, love him, serve him, and walk in all his ways.
All the Lord has said, we will do.
Yishabarak Avotenu Avraham Yitzchak v'Yaakov. He who blessed our fathers, Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, may he bless Rabbi John, may he bless Matthew, may he bless Jenny, may he bless Celia, who have come up to honor God and the Torah. May the Holy One bless them and their families and send blessing and prosperity on all the work of their hands. Baruchu et Adonai HaMavorach,
Baruch Adonai HaMavorach le'olam va'ed.
Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam, asher bachar banu mikol ha'amim, v'natan lanu et Torato. Baruch atah Adonai noten haTorah.
Amen.
Bless the Lord who is blessed.
Bless the Lord who is blessed forever and ever.
Blessed are you, Lord our God, ruler of the universe, who chose us from all peoples and gave to us the Torah. Blessed are you, Lord, giver of the Torah.
V'adaber Adonai el Moshe lemor zot tiyeh Torat ha-Metzora beyom taharato v'ahuvei el ha-kohen. You may be seated. And once again, look, I know once again it's not in the text, but literally that's what's going on. And once again, the Lord spoke to Moses saying, this is, so it will be, or this will be, the guideline related to Metzora, interesting term. Impurities of all kinds, we'll describe it that way. In the day of their, another term for impurity. And so they will be brought to the priest, anyone who has that kind of impurity. It has to do with ritual items. And this is a very interesting text with all kinds of interesting things in it. Anything from skin disease to mildew. So if mildew shows up on your skin, then you need, I'm sorry. But very specific and important instructions found throughout this particular passage, but we won't get into that. Now normally we do have a reader, an English reader from reading the Torah portion. But instead, you guys are going to read it. So take out your bulletin, look on the bottom of the first inside page, and follow along as you become the reader. Ready? All right, here we go. V'adaber Adonai el Moshe lemor. Zot tiyeh Torat ha-Metzora b'yom taharato v'huva el ha-kohen. Real easy. Great job. Thank you for being our readers this evening. Haftorah, let's try that again. Haftorah blessings are found on pages 94 to 97.
But first, the last blessing.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam, asher natan lanu Torat emet, v'chayei olam neta b'tocheinu. Baruch atah Adonai noten haTorah.
Amen.
Blessed are you, Lord our God, ruler of the universe, who gave us the Torah of truth and life everlasting, planted in our midst. Blessed are you, Lord, giver of the Torah.
As the text began, and we reminded ourselves, once again the Lord spoke to Moses, and by speaking to Moses he speaks to us as well, because as the Zohar Torah reminds us, on pages 98 and 99, these are the words that come from God, through Moses, directly to us. And as our ancestors received these words, so now we receive them as well as we stand in his presence, as in fact our ancestors stood in his presence. If you need the transliteration, you've already found it. If you found the Haftorah blessings, it's page 95.
Zot HaTorah Asher Sam Moshe Lifnei Bnei Yisrael Al Pi Adonai Be'ad Moshe. This is the Torah which Moses placed before the children of Israel. It is in accord with the Lord's command by the hand of Moses.
You may be seated, and you may look again at pages 94 to 97.
Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam asher bachar b'neim tovim v'ratzav divrahem hanemarim ba'emet. Baruch atah Adonai habocher b'Torah Moshe Avdo, Yisrael Amo, Uvinviye Haemet Vatzedek.
Amen.
Blessed are you, O Lord our God, ruler of the universe, who selected good prophets, delighting in their words which were spoken truthfully. Blessed are you, O Lord, who chose the Torah, your servant Moses, your people Israel, and the prophets of truth and righteousness.
I'll be reading from Malachi, chapters 3, 1, and verses 4 to 5. Look, I am sending my messenger to clear the way before me, and the Lord, whom you seek, will suddenly come to his temple. Yes, the messenger of the covenant, in whom you take such delight. Look, here he comes, says Adonai Tsevaot. Then the offering of Judah and Jerusalem will be pleasing to Adonai, as it was in the days of old, as in years gone by. Then I will approach you for judgment, and I will be quick to witness against sorcerers, adulterers, and perjurers, against those who take advantage of wage earners, widows, and orphans, against those who rob the foreigners of his rights and don't fear me, says Adonai Tsevaot.
I'll be reading from Malachi 4, 2 through 6. But to you who fear my name, the Son of Righteousness will rise with healing in its wings, and you will break out leaping like calves released from the stall. You will trample the wicked, they will be ashes under the soles of your feet on the day when I take action, says the Lord of hosts. Remember the Torah of Moses my servant, which I enjoined on him at Horeb, laws and rulings for all Israel. Look, I will send to you Eliyahu the prophet before the coming of the great and terrible day of Adonai, and he will turn the hearts of the fathers to the children, and the hearts of the children to their fathers.
Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam Sor kol haolamim zadik b'kol hadarot ha'el ha'ne'eman ha'omer v'yoseh hamdaber u'mkayem shekol devarav emet v'tzedek Ne'eman atahu Adonai Eloheinu v'ne'emanim devarecha v'ravarecha nivarecha achor lo yeshuv rekam ki el melech ne'eman v'rechaman atah Baruch atah Adonai ha'el ha'ne'eman b'kol devarav. Blessed are you, O Lord our God, ruler of the universe, rock of all ages, righteous throughout all generations. You are the faithful God, promising and then performing, first speaking, then fulfilling. For all your words are true and righteous. Faithful are you, O Lord our God, and faithful are your words. For no word of yours shall remain unfulfilled. You are a faithful and merciful God and King. Blessed are you, O Lord God, who are faithful in fulfilling your words. Have mercy on Zion. It is the fountain of our life, and very soon deliver her who grieves deeply. Blessed are you, O Lord, who makes Zion rejoice with her children.
And Zion's rejoicing children now respond.
Make us joyful, O Lord our God, with the prophet Elijah, your servant, and with the kingdom of the house of David, your anointed. May Elijah come soon and bring joy to our hearts. Allow no stranger to sit on David's throne or inherit his glory. For by your holy name you swore to him that his light would not be quenched forever. Blessed are you, O Lord, the shield of David. Baruch atah Adonai, Magen David.
And you will have noticed how well that closing paragraph fit with the Haftarah portion for this evening and for this season that we're about to celebrate. And so these words impacted the lives of our ancestors down through the years. They should impact our lives as well as a tree which takes root in our lives. And so we say, renew our days as of old. And we literally say that now as we respond with its cream. Pages 96 and 97.
It's Chaim Hilama Chazikimba Vetom Chea Meusha Derachea Darkei Noam Vekol Nativotea Hashivenu Adonai Alecha V'nashuva Kadesh Yameinu Kekedem Hashivenu Adonai Alecha V'nashuva Kadesh Yameinu A tree of life it is to those who take hold of it, and happy are those who support it. Its ways are ways of pleasantness, and all its paths are peace. Turn us, Lord, to you, and let us return. Renew our days as of old.
If our days have been properly renewed as of old, then we are better equipped to stand before him as we now do as his priests did, so we now stand clothed, as it were, with the righteousness he provides, and expressing our gratitude. Pages 98 and 99, Uvnu Cho Yomar expresses all of that as we respond.
Uvnu Cho Yomar Shuva Adonai Revavot Alfei Yisrael. When the ark rested, Moses would say, Return, O Lord, to the myriads of Israel's families. Arise, O Lord, to your resting place, you and your mighty ark. Clothe your priests with righteousness. May those who experience your faithful love shout for joy. For the sake of your servant David, don't delay the return of your Messiah. Va'avor David Avdecha, al teshev panei mishachecha. Ki lakach tov natati lachem, Torati al ta'azovu. I give you good instruction. Do not forsake my Torah.
And now, as we greet one another here on the Bima, we invite you to greet one another there in the sanctuary. Now, stay in your section with one exception. That's Gary, since he's the only one in his section. He can move out of his section. Shabbat school is excused. Pardon me, we're not plugged in. Oh.
The fire marshal would be proud.
Yes, he would. Or she. Check here. And now your rabbi is truly plugged in. Or something akin to that. Centuries ago, a little baby was born to modest parents. He was born in a rustic stable in an obscure village in a remote province. He never traveled more than a couple hundred miles from his home. He wrote no books, held no public office. In fact, he was in the public eye for only 3.5 brief years, and that merely as an itinerant rabbi. And then he was executed while still quite young. Yet he has been the focus of intense passion, both positive and negative, for 2,000 years. Of him it has been rightly said, and I quote, "All the armies that ever marched, all the navies that were ever built, all the parliaments that ever sat put together have not affected the life of humankind on this earth as has that one solitary life," end quote. But this should not surprise us. God promised just such an impact when he spoke through the prophet Haggai 2,500 years ago. And he said, "I will shake all nations when the desired of all nations," a messianic image, "will come." Shake us up when he comes. And it all culminated and focused in one final week. Listen as one author sets the stage for us for that week. And I quote, "It's early in the final week. The props and the players for the drama are in position. 6-inch spikes are in the bin. A crossbeam leans across the shed wall. Thornlings are wrapped around the trellis, awaiting the weaving of a soldier's fingers. The players are nearing the stage. Pilate is concerned with the number of Passover pilgrims. Annas and Caiaphas are restless over a volatile Nazarene. Judas views his master with suspicious eyes. A centurion is available, awaiting the next crucifixions. Players and props, only this is no play. It's a divine plan. A plan begun before Adam ever felt heaven's breath, and now all heaven waits and watches. All eyes are on one figure, the Nazarene. Commonly clad, uncommonly focused, leaving Jericho and walking toward Jerusalem. He doesn't chatter, he doesn't pause. He's on a journey, his final journey. Even the angels are silent. They know this is no ordinary walk. They know this is no ordinary week. For hinged on this week is the door of eternity. Let's walk with him. Let's see how Yeshua spent his final days. Let's see what mattered to God. When a person knows the end is near, only the important surfaces. Impending death distills the vital. The trivial is bypassed. The unnecessary is overlooked. That which is vital remains. He knew the end was near. He knew the end was near. He read the last chapter before it was written and heard the final chorus before it was sung. As a result, the critical was centrifuged from the casual. Distilled truths taught, deliberate deeds done, each step calculated, every act premeditated. Knowing he had just 1 week with the disciples, what did Yeshua teach them? Knowing it would be his last time in the temple, how did he act? Conscious that the last sand was slipping through the hourglass, what mattered? Enter the week and observe. Feel his passion, laughing as children sing, weeping as Jerusalem welcomes, challenging as priests accuse, pleading as disciples sleep, feeling sad as Pilate chooses. Sense his power, blind eye seeing, fruitless tree withering, money changers scampering, religious leaders cowering, temple shaking, earth trembling, tomb opening. Hear his promise. Death has no power, failure holds no prisoners, fear has no control. For God has come in answer to the anxious Jewish prayers to fulfill the ancient Jewish promises. God has come into your world. So follow Yeshua on his final journey during this week, a week that quite literally shook the world. And we'll do so, and we begin, as you see it in the outline, with the preparation. And it starts, interestingly enough, with Passover sheep and the entry of the Passover lambs into Jerusalem. Now, usually this takes place 5 days prior to the Passover itself. Only this week it took place 4 days prior, because the day it would normally have fallen for this to take place was a Shabbat. So the day after Shabbat, Sunday, is this time. It's an important part of the preparation for and the examination and selection process. And so the priest is there in the temple, and he looks over and Passover lambs, and he helps his family select the lamb, and he says, "Behold the lamb," as he points to the lamb. Now, some among that crowd may have recalled the statements of one known as Yochanan Hamabil. History calls him by another name, but perhaps we should simply name him Johnny, the Big Dipper. But others would have recalled the Midrash commenting on Isaac's Akedah, the attempted sacrifice by Jacob. That Midrash points out that it was the shedding of Isaac's blood that brought about the Passover deliverance. And so I quote the Midrash for you. "And when he sees the blood of Isaac's Akedah, as it is said," quoting Genesis 22:14. "And Abraham called the name of the place, the Lord sees." Now elsewhere, quoting 1 Chronicles 21:15, elsewhere it says, "And as he was about to destroy, the Lord beheld, and he repented him of evil." So what did he behold? He beheld the blood of Isaac's Akedah, as it was said, quoting Genesis 22:8, "God will for himself," hear it, "behold the lamb for a burnt offering." In fact, a clear comparison can be made between Yeshua's sacrifice and the Akedah, the binding of Isaac. You see, another Midrash tells us how Abraham took the wood for the burnt offering and put it on Isaac, quote, "like one bearing his own cross," end quote. Striking, isn't it? Striking, certainly, especially in view of what would take place in Jerusalem during this week in another 3 days. So, it's Palm Sunday. And as it turns out, the Passover lambs had been brought to the temple courtyard area. They had come off the Mount of Olives, entered through the eastern gate, and up to the temple courtyard area. And now it was time for Yeshua's trip into Jerusalem. But let's observe the details more closely. And for a number of you, perhaps even many of you, you've walked through this with me in other venues. But walk through this with me yet again as we turn to Matthew chapter 21 and verse 9. And I'm going to suggest you turn to Matthew chapter 21, verse 9 and following, unless you have, in fact, memorized that text. We want to look at that text in context, and here it is. You remember the scene. The reason it's called Palm Sunday comes into view very quickly. But Yeshua comes riding in off the Mount of Olives through that eastern gate into Jerusalem, and he's riding on a donkey. And as he goes riding through the crowds, quick question. This is Passover time. It's in Jerusalem. Who are the crowds?
Jews.
Thank you, Jews. Now back to our story since we set the context. Okay, he comes riding in through those crowds, and those crowds of Jewish people do what when they first see him? They, what do they do first?
Lay down things.
Thank you. That's why it's called Palm Sunday. None of these questions are going to be difficult, so hang in there with me. They lay down the palms. This was like rolling out the red carpet, only they rolled out a green one. When you welcome a great dignitary or a king, the way in which you welcome him is by laying out a stream of palms. All right, now, once they have done that, what's the first thing they say to him?
Hosanna.
Hosanna. Yeah, praise him, praise him, praise him. No, Hosanna does not mean that. Hosanna means Hoshana, save us now. It's the prayers we also use at Sukkot, very messianic prayers, because they're addressed to the branch of David. Hoshana. So here's what's happening. The crowds greet him as a great king. And then they address prayers to him that are normally addressed to the Messiah himself. And then after Hoshana, what do they say? No. There's something in between. They address him how?
Son of David.
Son of David, Ben David. In the time of the Second Temple period, the most common title for the Messiah was Ben David, or Son of David. So they are calling him Messiah. And now what do they say in greeting? Baruch haba b'shem Adonai. Blessed is he who comes in the name of the Lord. The rabbis of old used to say this: if you ever have the opportunity to greet the Messiah, here's how you greet him. Baruch haba b'shem Adonai. Blessed is he who comes in the name of the Lord. So Matthew is telling us in 4 distinct ways that the crowds welcome Yeshua as Messiah. They roll out the green carpet. They say messianic prayers to him. They address him as the Messiah, and they greet him as we're told to greet the Messiah. Did you catch it? The crowds of Jews received Yeshua as the Messiah. They did not reject him. Most storytellers get this wrong. Matthew, as well as the other Gospels, get it right. Oh, and by the way, remember part of the context too. Zechariah 9:9 said, "Say to the daughter of Zion, behold, your king is coming, and he's riding on a donkey." Isaiah 62 earlier had put it differently. Verse 11. He says, "Say to the daughter of Zion," a connecting verse therefore, "behold, your," Hebrew says, literally, your Yeshua is coming, bringing his rewards with him. They understood that as they saw what was happening. No wonder then the leaders responded in Matthew 26, verse 5, "We can't take him by day because of the crowds. So we've got to do it some other way." They understood that the crowds had welcomed Yeshua. By the way, 3 days later, the same crowds are described in Luke chapter 23, verses 27 and 48. And there it says, as they saw that Yeshua was being led off to be executed, the crowds lined the streets, and they wept. And then when they saw him up on that hill, the crowds once again wept and grieved. The crowds had not turned on him. They had not turned away from him. Oh, by the way, that imagery that you find in Luke comes directly from the imagery related to David the father. This is David's son. But for more on that, you got to talk to Dr. Patrice. That's her area. Well, that's some preparation, I would say. So now we're on to Passover, first night of the Seder. And we have the Seder directed by Yeshua. You know, one of the key things about the Seder is the question, why is this night different? Well, we can ask the same question for this Seder, why is this night different? Because it certainly is. And so as the text unfolds, you will find that in application of the washing of the hands, there's the washing of the feet. And then at the dipping, by the way, if you want to know the rest of this story, tomorrow, 1 o'clock. So I'm just briefly summarizing. At the dipping of the parsley, Judas exits. And then, as it was the honor of the youngest, so you have Yochanan Hashliach saying, "Ma nishtana halayla hazeh mikol halelot." Why is this night different? And that begins the asking of the 4 questions that night. There was a 5th question that was asked, but for that, tomorrow again. And then they eat dinner, and then there's another striking adaptation. It has to do with the afikomen, often called the dessert piece. Oh, but it has much more meaning than that. And for that meaning, guess what? Tomorrow. I will simply say this, as was said by one of my favorite authors. No, not C.S. Lewis or Tolkien. In this case, the Orthodox Israeli scholar Pinchas Levi. He mentioned this in a lecture at Munich. I like the fact that he did it in Munich because in a few short weeks, next month, Dr. Patrice and I will have the opportunity to be speaking in Munich. Anyhow, here's what he pointed out. He said, at that time period, there was a matzah that was placed under the tray. It was reserved for the Messiah, when he should come. And Yeshua took this piece and he said, this is my body. In other words, he's saying, I am the Messiah, the one to come. But we need to take a step back and put this all into its proper setting. In other words, the scenario in Jerusalem that was Yeshua's last week. So take out that insert if you've not already done so, open it up, and you'll see the outline of what we're now going to walk through, as in fact he walked through it in the year 30. This is the way in which the calendar looked in the year 30, the last year of Yeshua's life. So let's walk through it together very briefly. Palm Sunday, we've already begun to walk through this. It's the entry of the Passover lambs into Jerusalem and into the temple. As I said, usually 5 days before Passover. This year, it was 4 days due to the Sabbath. But that becomes important as we put this thing together. What happened on Monday? You've got a complete blank column. Well, let me just suggest this was a time of the withering fig tree and some withering questions, as you find them in Matthew 21 and 22. More pertinent to our topic at this point is Tuesday. Tuesday evening is Yeshua's last Seder. You might say, wait a second, what do you mean Tuesday evening? What I mean is simply this. We're told by Mark, chapter 14, verse 13, as to the where and when this Seder took place. If you look at March 14, it's April anyhow. If you look at Mark 14, verse 13, you won't find any of what I just said, but you do if you can understand what's between the lines and no, it's not between the lines, it's written in the lines. They ask, where shall we celebrate the Seder? And Yeshua says, go find a man with a pitcher on his head. He's not talking about anything related to tonight's game in Toronto. Pardon. Why is that significant? Because in those days, with the exception of one community, it was the women who usually drew the water, but in the Essene community, it was the men. And so that tells us would be an Essene Seder. It also tells us where it would be celebrated, because there was at that time an Essene quarter of Jerusalem. And in fact, it is there that we find the traditional site of the last Seder in what used to be the Essene quarter. But anyhow, the other part of this. How do we know it's Tuesday night? Because the calendar the Essenes had was a special calendar. They constructed the calendar in such a way that the holidays fell on the same day of the week every year. So we knew when the Seder would take place. It takes place on a Tuesday night. Okay, fair enough. Now we're ready to move on. That means Wednesday becomes the Essene Passover, 15th of Nisan on the Essene calendar. However, that's not the same on the temple calendar. See, temple operated by a different calendar. And so, it was on Wednesday that we have the crucifixion. Interestingly enough, it's on Wednesday that you have the sacrifice of the Passover lambs, according to the temple calendar. And we're told that the first of the Passover lambs would be sacrificed at 3 in the afternoon. The Gospels tell us that Yeshua died at 3 in the afternoon, as the first of the Passover lambs was being sacrificed. By the way, we are given the explicit instructions concerning the Passover sacrifice, break no bone of the animal. Contrary to every usual practice of crucifixion, none of Yeshua's bones were broken. He was the Passover lamb. And so, on the Essene calendar, what is precisely called the Feast of Unleavened Bread begins. It begins this particular night. Why is that significant? I'm going to suggest there's a hint at this in John chapter 12, verse 24, where Yeshua says, unless the seed of wheat falls into the ground and dies, it will not get to flower and produce grain. Wheat, unleavened bread, death on that day, and the burial that's pictured by falling into the ground. Nicely lines up with this particular evening. By the way, we get this from the Midrash. This is according to Rabbi Joshua. He says redemption is to occur on the 14th of Nisan. As it occurred before, so also in the future. This is the 14th of Nisan on the temple calendar. I know it says Nisan 15, but that's the Essene calendar. Because Nisan the 15th falls on Thursday in the temple calendar. It's the normative Passover, as you see in that column. And in fact, it is a Sabbath. Every Jewish holiday, well, not Purim, not Hanukkah, But all the others are Sabbaths. So also here, it's a Sabbath. And so this is the start of the festival of unleavened bread on the Essene calendar. It actually started the night before, but this is the first day of it then. All right, that brings us to what is Friday. This is the festival of unleavened bread according to the temple calendar. It also is the time for the preparations for the weekly Sabbath. By the way, it's the time for something else. It's the time when the Pharisees would wave what's called the first fruits, the sheaf of wheat, or barley rather, which is the first part of the harvest that's brought before God, so it's called the waving of the first fruits. And in a sense, that functions in our week as a preparation for the reading that happens the next day, and for the events of the next day, which, by the way, is interesting, first fruits, because the rabbi says in 1 Corinthians 15, verse 20, Yeshua's become the first fruits of those who sleep, as he was resurrected. So that's the sign of the resurrection. And speaking of resurrection, we get to Saturday. In the synagogue, the Haftarah reading is Ezekiel 37. Ezekiel 37 is a classic Halloween passage. What? It's when the skeletons come to life. It's a picture of the resurrection. And as that day closes, remember the words of Havdalah. The Lord is my light and my salvation. No. Behold, God is my salvation. And then it says, He is my light, and listen to this, He has become my salvation. As the day closes, we have that refrain. And what do we have taking place in this week? We have the resurrection. The day is now over. The first day has begun. And so, in a sermon at another holiday, Shavuot, Shimon says, the resurrection, Acts 2:36, demonstrated him to be both the Lord of the universe and the Messiah of Israel. In other words, he literally has become our salvation. Oh, by the way, let's look back at this calendar. You'll see that at the bottom of Wednesday, it's the first night. At the bottom of Thursday, it's the second night. At the bottom of Friday, it's the third night. At the top of Thursday, it's the first day. At the top of Friday, it's the second day. At the top of Saturday, it's the third day. 3 days and 3 nights expires when? At Havdalah. And by the way, speaking of sundown, thank you, Betty, for reminding me of this. John chapter 20, verse 1 says that the women came to the grave while it was still dark, a long while before dawn. They celebrated Havdalah, and they went to look for their master, the Messiah. On that Sunday, you have the waving of the sheaf, in other words, the first fruits at the temple, for the Sadducees. And notice how strikingly the resurrection event is bracketed by the first fruits. He's become the first fruits of those who have slept. Now, you need to understand something about this. This is not the way it lines up every year. It's the way that the three calendars, the Sadducean or temple calendar, the Pharisaic calendar, well, both the Pharisaic and Sadducean calendars were temple calendars, but they had some differences, as I've just indicated for you, and the Essene calendar. 3 calendars lined up in this way, in this unique week. To borrow an old paperback title, this was a real Passover plot. And as we say at the conclusion of the Seder, the Nirtzah prayer of the Haggadah, it has now been accomplished. Shouldn't surprise us, because that's what Yeshua already set us up for when he said that in John 19:30. It has now been accomplished. Something else I want to point out in reflecting on this week. The Bible tells us that the Jews took the Passover lamb in Egypt on the 10th day of Nisan. And the Midrash records that that fell on a Sabbath. And that is why we call the Sabbath before the festival of Passover Shabbat HaGadol. Guess what tonight is? Shabbat HaGadol, the great Sabbath. Since the Israelites left Egypt on the 15th of Nisan, the biblical date of the festival itself, they had to leave that first day on a Thursday, the 5th day after the Sabbath. You'll notice what takes place on the Thursday here. Same thing. This week matches up with the original Exodus events. Strikingly, once again. Reminds us of what a rabbi said when the right time had fully come. Boy, it sure looks like this fits the bill, doesn't it? But just what has been accomplished? Yeshua says, now everything's been accomplished. Well, let's go back to that text I just cited the beginning of. Galatians chapter 4, verse 4 and following. It says, when the right time had fully come, God sent the Son, born of a woman, born under the Torah. In other words, he's part of Israel, to redeem those who were under the Torah, Israel. Redeem. Hang on a second. That sounds familiar. Yeah, part of our Tehillah Habrit Chadashah portion this evening, reflecting the prayers, specifically the prayer of the first paragraph of the Amidah. God, send a Redeemer to your children for the sake of your name. We pray in that first paragraph. Anyhow, to get back to this text, to redeem those under the Torah, in other words, Israel, that we might receive the full rights of children. Because you are children, God sent the Spirit of His Son into our hearts, the Spirit who calls out in us. Why is that significant? Because it's as if His Son, and we are now His children, call out and say, Abba, Father. So you are no longer a slave, Exodus terminology, but you are a child. And since you are a child, God has also made you into an heir. In other words, to get to the text, the Haftarah texts for tonight. Malachi 4, verse 2. The Son of Righteousness has truly come with healing in His wings. And that healing has taken place in what we call redemption. It has to do with rescue. It has to do with restoration. It has to do with renewal. And a few verses later, as was read, we look for Elijah to come. To do what? To announce the coming of the Messiah. But that's not where the text begins. The other reading from tonight, Malachi chapter 3, verse 1, sets the stage for us. And it's with this that I will conclude. He says, look, I'm sending my messenger to clear the way before me. And the Lord whom you seek will suddenly come to His temple. Look, as the text begins, but let's continue. Yes, the messenger of the covenant, in whom you take delight. Look, here He comes, says Adonai Tzevaot, the Lord of hosts. So take a look. Look at who's speaking. Adonai Tzevaot, the Lord of hosts, is speaking. And whom does He send? My messenger, He says. As this messenger comes to the temple, suddenly comes to His temple. By the way, he showed up the last time on Palm Sunday, but that's an aside to the story. As he comes to the temple, notice how he is described. The one who comes to His temple is described as the messenger of the covenant, in whom you take such delight. Who comes to His temple? The messenger. But notice in the text, and the Lord whom you seek will suddenly come to His temple. The Lord, the messenger of the covenant. So the Lord of hosts, messenger, follow the text. You've got the page number, what was it? 788 or something like that. The Lord whom you seek is the one who comes to the temple. The Lord of hosts, messenger, is the Lord. Now, several ancient Jewish scholars also saw this interesting correlation. I'm going to quote to you from two. They're both from the 12th century. Rabbi Ibn Ezra says, the Lord, he's reflecting on Malachi 3:1, is both divine majesty and He's the angel of the covenant. For the sentence is doubled. Rabbi David Kimchi, very important rabbi and commentator, puts this final line onto it. He says, the Lord is King Messiah. He's also the angel of the covenant. And as anticipated, He came before. And as the Haftarah reminds us, He will come yet again. Now, so what do? We're amazed at what God has done and the way in which He's put everything together. But let's read the Haftarah texts. I'm not going to read them to you again. They've been read to you once. But read them tonight. That's what we should be doing as we await His return. specifically the first two verses of the Haftarah itself. Malachi 3, verses 4 and 5. That's what our business is. That's what we should be doing about. Because on Shabbat, we're told by the rabbis of old, you're supposed to be doing the Lord's business. You want to know what the Lord's business is? Malachi 3, 4, and 5 tells us. Let's be about doing his business as we celebrate this wonderful season. Take the next minute or so for time of reflection, inquiry, and of response. And when that time that we anticipate in the Haftarah comes, Elena tells us what we anticipate. The world will be perfected under the rule of the Lord Almighty at the time of the kingdom of David's greater son, time when all abominations will cease, and all false gods will be put to an end. We rise, once again in his presence, facing Jerusalem, the place where all these things will take place, as we respond, as we anticipate, and as, when we bow, we accept our role and our responsibility to prepare for that time. Pages 102 to 107.
Aleinu l'shabech l'adon hakol, l'tekedu al yotzei bereshit, shelo asanu k'goya haratzot, elo samanu k'mishpachot ha'adama, shelo samkalkeinu kahem, v'gor aleinu k'kol hamonam, ve'anachnu korim, ומשתחווים ומודים לפני מלך מלכי המלכים הקדוש ברוך הוא שהוא נוטה שמיים ויוצר הארץ ומושב יקרו בשמיים ממעל ושכינה דוזו בקווי מרומים Eloheinu, Eino, Emet Malkeinu, Efesu Ato, Kavetu B'Torato, Vayedata Hayom, Hashayota, El Levavecha, Ki Adonai, Hu Elohim, Bashamayim Imahal, Ve'al Haaretz Mitachat, It is incumbent upon us to praise the Master of all, to exalt the Creator of the world, for he has made us distinct from the nations and unique among the families of the earth. Our destiny is not like theirs. Our calling is our task. We bow down and acknowledge before the King of Kings that there is none like him. For he stretched forth the heavens like a tent and established the earth. Truly there is none like our Lord and King. As the Torah says, you shall know this day and reflect in your heart that it is the Lord who is God in the heavens above, and on the earth beneath there is none else. We hope, O Lord our God, to soon behold your majestic glory, when all abominations shall be removed, and all false gods shall be at hand. Then shall the world be perfected under the rule of the Lord Almighty, and all mankind shall call upon your name. For to you every knee must bow, and every tongue declare that you are God. Reign over us soon and forever. May the kingdom of David's greater Son be established forever. For then shall the words be fulfilled, The Lord shall be king forever, and the Lord shall be king over all the earth. On that day the Lord shall be one, and his name one. Hakatu b'toratecha, Adonai yimloch le'olam vayed. V'ne'enar v'haya Adonai l'melech al kol haaretz. Vayom hahu yehieh Adonai echad. Ushmo
You may be seated. Oh, except Gary.